Okay, so Hiten, take me back to 2018 actually, when you had the health check that triggered the start of your fitness journey, and then obviously what later transpired into your RNT journey. So yeah, take us
Yeah,
back.
yeah, no. So for me, it's been a very long journey. So that kind of moment back in July 2018, I can remember it kind of clear as day. I was transitioning from one role to another, and as part of my old role, I had access to kind of private healthcare, and I thought actually it's a great thing. I hadn't done one for a few years. Let me do one prior to me kind of joining my new workplace. So kind of did the test. It was a full blood test. Did that. And it was a private health test as well. So I kind of went to go along, did that. And at the end was a GP kind of session, kind of going through the results, which she did go through. And actually, to my surprise, the kind of first thing she kind of said was, "You're kind of diabetic," and I was taken aback, really. And actually, my heart sank a little bit, and I didn't know how to react to that. And it wasn't just a case of you're pre-diabetic, as a lot of people hear, and you're kind of, yeah, you need to be careful. It was pretty much, no, you are full-blown diabetic. And when I mean by diabetic, I mean, in effect, my levels of the kind of blood sugar levels were twice the recommended levels of a healthy individual on that side of things. So it wasn't just a small little bit over, you are over. And her immediate kind of response was actually, I need you to kind of go see your GP and start thinking about working together to get some medicine in effect, really, is what she was kind of saying to me. And for me at the time, it was, as I mentioned, kind of my heart sank a little bit. Kind of the white came on my face, and I think I panicked, really. I kind of panicked. I didn't know what to do. Just initial thoughts were about my parents who are both diabetic, and obviously kind of their health, etc. And I thought, I can't see myself being my parents now at the age that I was. So I was kind of in my late 30s during that time. And as I said, I kind of panicked a little bit, and I kind of refused to give my permission as such, because it was a private health check. They needed my permission to give the results to my GP, and I just refused. I said, no, I don't want anything formal on my record. So in the back of my head, I thought, well, actually, as soon as I kind of gave that permission, I'd kind of have that labeled on my kind of health records. And I thought, no, this is something that I need to sort out and do myself. And the reason why I thought it was a bit of a shock, because I think probably none of my close mates or friends had mentioned anything. I was enjoying life, as you do. You kind of go out, kind of do what you want to do. And as a reference, I was probably about 118 kg at the time. So thinking about it now, that was ridiculous and massively overweight and obese. But at the time, I was enjoying myself, enjoying life, in effect, really. So I, in effect, took it upon myself to say, actually, I need to do something. I need to kind of reduce my levels, see what I can do myself before I actually get any formal medical kind of treatment on that side, if I could do it myself. And that kind of then ultimately that kind of started my journey to where I am kind of today. But even then, you'd think it would happen kind of, well, not necessarily overnight, but it would happen in the next 6 months or 12 months, but it wasn't. So I went through the typical phase of kind of going through various different diets and nutrition plans. And I would say probably for about 3 to 4 years. And this, you name it, I was trying to do it. So I kind of initially started off in the first 6 months on a literally no sugar. So the following day, stop sugar. So for literally cut sugar completely out of my diet. The following day after that, blood test. And for 6 months, in effect, didn't have any sugar in anything I ate at all. To be honest, I wasn't a big sugar person, but it was only then once you cut it out, you realize actually it kind of consumes in little small bits and pieces here and there. And even if you're kind of having bread or something like that, you kind of have natural sugar in all of those kind of contents. So I kind of cut out sugar completely from my diet. And that kind of worked a little bit. So that kind of took my blood sugars a little bit lower, took my weight lower. And then but I couldn't maintain that. So I kind of switched to a low fat, low carb diet as kind of the next one. And I kind of did that bit of a cycle for about 3 to 4 years on that side of things, just chopping and changing, following kind of social media just to kind of see what kind of things are out there, what the recommended things are, and so forth. So I kind of did a whole bunch of things on that side, and don't get me wrong, it did help. So overall, in that 3 to 4 years, I probably went from about 118 kg down to probably mid to late 80s. Okay. So it dropped. It did what it needed to do at the time. The big challenge was I just felt stagnated. So kind of with my health, my body, my weight, my mind, it just felt towards, after those 3-4 years, that I was kind of in a bit of a rut. I was kind of like going from one to another. Albeit my weight did go down, I still didn't feel comfortable and with my body and where my weight was, but it was just stagnating and actually probably stagnated for a number of months towards the back end of that process on that area. I think the biggest challenge was I ultimately did all this for my health. That was a kind of initial kind of trigger point, and that was absolutely was my trigger point in July 2018. And as I mentioned, though, my blood sugars did go down, but they were always kind of on the borderline. So when I'd do a test, sometimes it would be good. I'd probably do one another couple of months later. It would then be back on the borderline. It was just never, I would say, consistently in that safe zone. It was always kind of in between. And where it was positive, then something else kind of triggered off. So in effect, really, when my sugars were low, my cholesterol kind of suddenly went up again. So whatever I was doing, it just wasn't in the right combination on that side of things in that area. So that kind of made me think, well, actually, I need to do something different here. I can't keep doing this. I'd been doing this for 3 to 4 years, got somewhere, but for about 6 months prior, I kind of knew this isn't for me. This isn't the right place to kind of be on that side of things. So yeah, that was probably the big trigger moment in that side of thing. I thought, no, I need to do something different now.
Give us some metrics on this. So what was your starting body was 118, and then where did you in those 3-4 years whilst you were chopping and changing, what did you end up coming down to?
Yeah, so I chopped and changed, and it kind of went up and down, and I probably ended up just before joining kind of RNT was about 80, probably about 87, 88 kg is kind of when I went down to. So like I said, it did go down. Don't get me wrong.
It's 30 kilos.
So it went down quite a bit, but I was probably in the high 80s for about a year. Kind of prior to joining, it just wasn't shifting consistently enough, or in that sense at all. And I was trying various different things and kind of extreme, as I was saying, from like I said, carb based, low carb, kind of low fat, kind of no sugar, in effect, low sugar, kind of, or just going through various things, keto kind of diets and all sorts of things like that. And I think with most of these things, I always thought, and again in hindsight now, the kind of areas where I thought was kind of the enemy as such, and I think a lot of people think about this, is the fats and carbs. I always thought, actually, if I cut out carbs, or in particular carbs, and if I'm being probably honest, and we may come back to it later, I probably still have that challenge now mentally, I think, around that carbs thing, and hence why one of the reasons why I've kind of continued the kind of journey with RNT and want to continue that journey with RNT for that continuous education. So it was 118, got down to about 80, 87, 88 just before joining kind of RNT, but it was probably at that high 80s for about a year beforehand. Wow. And I kind of knew the year before, kind of a year before, I thought, actually, look, this is so kind of in effect, if I take it back 2 years before joining RNT, for a year it kind of got nowhere. I then thought, actually, I need to do something. I kind of had either family or kind of friends who'd kind of been with kind of businesses and companies like yourself. And so I started kind of following kind of various people on social media, including kind of RNT as one of them. The big difference for me with RNT compared to everyone else was really around the education. And it was a big forefront that kind of you were promoting and your team were promoting, and in particular the kind of free content that was there readily available, that I could go to your website, go to various, and in particular your podcast. So that I was listening to your podcast even so pre-joining RNT for 6 months leading up to it. 6 months leading up to it. So I was I kind of followed yourselves for about a year before, 6 months before I started listening to all the podcasts. I went through a whole raft of all your original kind of podcasts, some of the masterclass that were available for free. And it was brilliant because it kind of made me mentally start thinking a little bit differently on that front. And you guys were the only ones that were giving that kind of level of content out there, for free, and really that focus on the education. And the real importance was this wasn't just a short-term fix. This was a long-term kind of solution. And for me, I'd always been thinking about it as a short to medium, kind of either 3 to 6 months. Albeit I'd been on that journey for a couple of years before, it clearly wasn't getting there. So listening to the podcast, it was fantastic, actually. It was, like I said, that kind of triggered me off to a lot of these things, to the point where actually I started to implement, before joining RNT, I started implementing some of the kind of things that kind of you, Ed, kind of Ivan, Chloe, etc., were kind of promoting on your kind of podcast. So, for example, I started kind of building up my home gym back in January 2023. So 6 months prior to kind of joining RNT, I started actually focusing on resistance training. So up until then, I'd never joined a gym. And I only joined the gym actually post joining RNT. Never really done weights at all. My real focus had been cardio. So that's really what I've been blasting, was the cardio side of things. But kind of soon listening to kind of a lot of your kind of podcasts and kind of some of the testimonies and stuff like that, I soon realized kind of resistance training is really the way forward. I need to kind of shift my mind to. And I thought, well, actually, before I start any program or join anyone, I wanted to kind of get that mindset right and be as prepared as I can for this journey. So it was a kind of leading up to it. So one of the things I did was, as I said, set up a gym, kind of bought my kind of home equipment, bought some various kind of treadmill, and that was kind of partly down to COVID as well, but bought a treadmill, bought some various gym stuff at home, particularly kind of bench and weights were the kind of key things. And the other lifestyle change, and again, was one of the podcast, and I was trying to find it recently, but around alcohol. So something that you kind of did something around alcohol, and I can't remember the exact wording that you used, but it was around the kind of concept of wasted calories in effect. So again, that was a big trigger thing for me, was actually, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. I need to give myself the biggest opportunity to succeed well and give myself the biggest opportunity to succeed properly from this. So in January, not only did I kind of get my home gym up and running, I stopped drinking alcohol as well. So literally kind of my birthday was on 3rd of January, had my last beer then on the 3rd, and just stopped when I thought, actually, this is if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. And that I actually only started drinking post checkpoint, and I started to consume alcohol in small quantities back again, but that continued for a year where I just didn't have anything, no alcohol at all on that side. So I kind of was bought into the whole concept, what you were saying. The education was big for me, and that's the thing that kind of I started even pre-joining RNT. So I knew I wanted to join. It was a case of when, as opposed to if, and that's what it was. And that I just continued. I've continued following your podcast, continued doing. Actually, before joining RNT, I actually did join some kind of online training programs where they set me my training program, and I kind of did that for a couple of months. That was good. But what lacked on that side was the nutrition side. So, and I kind of knew that wasn't right for me. Like I can't do one part and not do the other part. So again, it was good for me to educate myself on some of the kind of exercises and following a routine on my phone. But I knew it wasn't quite right. So it was a case of trying to find that moment to jump in.
Amazing.
Yeah,
well, it's quite the journey that you've been on. One thing I picked up on is you said when you were 118 kilos, you said you're still sort of loving life.
Yeah.
If you were to look back, is that an honest reflection of where you're at? Or do you feel like you created like a dialogue in your head that everything's okay?
Yeah, I think it must have been, or it has to have been. Absolutely. So if I'm looking at myself now, and it's quite strange you say that, because actually some of my close friends who knew I was on a journey, I met them after checkpoint, and I met them and I'd sent them a link to my photo shoots, which after the first hysterical elements and the piss taking out of all of that. So once that got over and done with, they were actually shocked. I thought, they can't believe that's the way I was. Or they looked at some of the pictures, and I said, I can't believe you were that way. And I thought, I can't believe it as well. And I said, well, I can't believe you didn't tell me I was looking like that in the first place, let alone you couldn't believe it. So, well, I think it was one of these things where, now I'm thinking about it, I must have been just telling myself it was a great place to be, or not an issue to be, I think, on that side. And I think that's what it was. And again, as with a lot of your listeners, I think it's that Asian culture as well. It's kind of the food side, keep eating, keep drinking type of thing. And to kind of have a bit of body weight is seem to be kind of seen a bit healthy, I think, from that, I'd say from the older generation, and definitely including kind of my parents and my mother in particular, I think, on that side of things. So I thought I was enjoying the life until that moment where someone told me, no, you got diabetes. I thought, well, clearly I'm not. Clearly everything I was enjoying wasn't really doing me any favors kind of at all.
How old were you when you got diagnosed with diabetes?
So when I got diagnosed at that time, it was 2018. So I was 38.
Okay.
At the time, on that time when they said you have got it. But yeah, no, like I said, I think the main thing for me was I didn't want to kind of have it on my records formally. Yeah. So technically, formally, it's not on my records. Just I did something about it, and I kind of made sure I kind of did something with that. And kind of today, I think one of the big differences with joining RNT was, as I said, the education piece, but it's that consistency. Fats and carbs aren't bad. It's just, you just need to know how much you're having and when to have them, and so forth. And my kind of bloods are kind of great now. So I've kind of, not only am I in the safe zone, or have been in the safe zone consistently, I'm actually in the kind of very healthy kind of zone now from a blood cholesterol level completely, and have been now for a number of months as well on that side. So that's been a massive shift, actually.
So you had your trigger moment, you went on this journey, tried everything, got down to about high 80s, and then you had another trigger moment of like, look, I can't keep messing around with these things. Let me get some serious results. Joined RNT. How did you, because you had so much background prep, and you'd done the listening, you'd done the education, which I think is so important. How did you find the initial process? Like you had all these different things you tried, and then you've gone into the RNT world. What were the early days like for you, and some of the early challenges and potential obstacles?
Yeah, it was definitely challenging on that kind of initial side. I'd say challenging in a sense where I was going against my natural thoughts around eating certain food types, so i.e. the carbs and fats. That was a challenging thing for me, kind of having a prescribed kind of meal. So I'd always said to myself before that I would never measure my food. And that was something that I thought I would never want to do. I thought, no, I don't want to be one of those individuals that kind of measures their food out. And so that was a big thing for me. That was a big challenge mentally, to kind of, oh God, I'm having to now do what I said I wasn't ever going to do. Yeah. So kind of measuring out the food, having those kind of balanced kind of nutrition, so either fats and carbs. Again, that was a bit of a challenge. So initially I'd always kind of, well, actually, if I'm supposed to have 30 grams of rice, I may weigh out 25 grams. And thinking, actually, that's not going to do me any harm if I'm having less carbs, etc. So that was a big piece for me, the kind of initial piece. That first 2 weeks, actually, surprisingly, was actually quite good for me mentally, to kind of get to that place where it made me realize I'm actually not as fussy of a eater as I probably thought I was, and I could eat the same food day in, day out. And that was my kind of, that first 2 weeks was brilliant, because I was just eating chicken and salad, and as much as people say it's not great, but for me it was brilliant. I could eat it. I could eat the same foods for kind of pretty much lunch and dinner. Had it for 2 weeks, and actually probably for about 6-7 months, those first 2 weeks, I was probably the only 2 weeks that I had 100% adherence on. Actually, ironically, there's always kind of something going on in the future kind of weeks and months. But it made me realize, actually, I can actually do the same. I can do this. If I really want to kind of focus on this, I can eat the same foods. For me, it was about just adding that spice. And I think you've said it and other people have said it. It's just making sure I get the right combination of just not having chicken, but having some sort of spice on it, or something on it that kind of doesn't really impact your macros significantly, but it just gives enough of a flavor that kind of getting that right, actually. And once I found that mix, that kind of spice and mix that I kind of enjoyed, I still have that today. Kind of the same thing, but that is pretty much most of my meals. I would say definitely kind of midweek, Tuesday to kind of Thursday, is the same meals that I still have today as I did on week one of the whole program, and I enjoy it, and that's fine. That works 100% for me. On that side. So that was definitely the challenge at the beginning, and kind of the benefits was just kind of making sure I do that. The bit that I didn't quite get into, and I know kind of you coaches are big advocates of, and I still haven't got into it, and I don't think I ever will, is the batch cooking side of things. So I know that's been a big thing around kind of doing the batch cooking to save time, the kind of decision fatigue, and I absolutely 100% get all of that. I tried that in that first 2 weeks. I just, for whatever reason, it just didn't work. I just, whether I didn't like the food after or the effort of doing that. And that's why I think for me, because I was just having the same food most days and I was just sticking a piece of chicken in the air fryer, I was fortunate my wife was doing a lot of the salad stuff for me every day while she was doing it for the kids. So all I was doing, or all she would do, was just put a breast of chicken the right way into the air fryer for 10, 11 minutes, and it'll be done. And that will be my meal in effect.
Ultimately, it's a meal preparation strategy. So you've got one there. And it's not a case of like batch cooking for the week is the way forward. Like, to be honest, it's just about, there's so many ways you can do it. You can do once a week, twice a week, daily, like you're doing. And I think the decision fatigue element is still there because you're not making 21 different meals with 21 gourmet recipes every single week. So it's just about finding what works for you, and you just stumbled upon that, and you're still doing it, which is what it's all about.
Exactly. And I did try the batch. I tried to cook for a few days and so forth. That didn't work. But what did work was, as you said, just having that consistent mindset of just sticking to 1 or 2 or 3 kind of meals. Or so after the 2 weeks, once I had a bit more flexibility on my meals, I think, as with most people, for the first couple of weeks, you do kind of end up overthinking it too much, actually, and you end up doing like 4, 5, 6, 7 different meal types, and you're getting the coaches to check them. And yes, they all work from a macro perspective, but the kind of time and effort to kind of make sure you're following that on a daily basis, ticking it off, etc. I think soon after, within about 6, 7 weeks afterwards, I kind of just scaled them back to probably 2 or 3. And because I was working from home, it was like kind of having a working from home meal, working from the office meal, and a weekend meal. So I kind of, and even till today, those are my 3 meals in effect, really. I still have that today in effect, really, just to mix it up a little bit, make it a little bit different. Yeah.
So your high 80s high 80s when you joined RNT, talk about the process of going towards your checkpoint then. What was the reason, for example, you booked a photo shoot, and what was the process of getting from like the high 80s to like the 70s, and then ultimately towards your checkpoint weight, and doing something that I don't think you probably thought you would when you got the news that you were diabetic in 2018.
No, definitely not. And being honest, the photo shoot was never something that I wanted to kind of do, in all honesty. Or let me rephrase that. It was never something that I kind of really particularly thought about doing on that side. Because like I said, the first thing for me, the biggest priority was as I was mentioning, you mentioned, I kind of stagnated around the kind of high 80s, mid to high 80s for about a year and a half, actually, before joining. And that was my biggest priority. I thought, actually, look, I want a focused program that looks at my kind of training, looks at my nutrition, and to get me down. And it was always the kind of, as I kept on listening, the 1% a week type of drop. And I work in finance, so it's relatively straightforward. I thought, if I continue doing this, this will definitely achieve what I want to achieve, which is losing weight. And I didn't have a particular target. Didn't have any target. I just thought, look, I know if I can do the 1% a week, brilliant. I will lose weight and I'll get down to that kind of point where I want to. It was actually only when after probably the first month or 6 weeks, when I thought, I'm actually enjoying this. It was working for me. I was kind of, like I said, I was happy with the meals. The weight was coming off, and it came off pretty much from week 1 straight away. So I could see the progress from week 1, which was brilliant. For me, it was fantastic. So I could see it was working. It was doing it. I did a kind of, again, during the kind of initial phase, I did a blood test. The results were kind of getting better and better. So that's kind of when I knew, actually, this was actually all working well. I was kind of getting a bit more consistent on my blood results. kind of not in the kind of high levels at all. So it was kind of in the normal ranges for my blood sugars. And it was probably 2 months in when I thought, actually, I think I can think about the shoot, because I could hear, I was listening to a lot about the kind of shooters group going on, so various other groups that you had, and then on the kind of coaching course. So one of the big things apologies for chopping and changing here, but one of the big things I was a big advocate of in the first, and I still probably am now, in that first couple of months, was listening to the coaching calls. So I'll be very rarely I'd be live on them because of just my work commitments. But whenever I do my workouts in the morning, 3 times a week, I was initially doing them on my home gym. I would always listen to one of those coaching calls religiously 3 times a week. And you'd only have them twice. If I know that if I'd missed one, I could always catch up on any of them. So that was brilliant for me. That got me through a lot of this, actually, and supported me through in terms of the coaching calls. And it was only then when people started to talk about the actual checkpoint and the photo shoot, I thought, actually, this is something quite interesting, actually, for me. Like, if I'm achieving my health side, that was my first number one tick. If I was achieving that, which I was on the journey for, I thought, well, actually, why wouldn't I want to do something else? Why wouldn't I want something to kind of, I guess, I dare to say it, the vanity side of it, just feel like I've actually done something and actually achieved something at the end of it. And then it soon became a bit of a thing where I was kind of joking with my son and saying, look, I just want to get some abs now. That it literally became like that. I thought that was my target. I was like, I just want to get some sort of abs definition of some sort. And that's when I thought, actually, I can do this now. The drop was continuing. The blood sugars were doing well. So the health side was brilliant. And I thought, well, actually, I want to kind of do this now on that side of things. And that was the kind of moment where I thought, okay, how quickly can I do this? And I know it's one of the big mantras that you and the coaches say, which is kind of get in and get out. And anyone listening now afterwards, I 100% would agree with that. And that would be the one thing that's probably kept me going, is get in and get out. It's like, get in as quickly as you can in that fat loss phase, do it as quickly as you can, try and avoid doing kind of having the odd cheat snack here and there, or not recording something, because that one little thing could end up adding a week to your kind of whole progress. And albeit I know you'll be able to catch up with that, but it's a week being in that fat loss phase where actually you can actually be above that and go somewhere else. So for me, case of that, following that kind of get in and get out routine. And so, like I said, I started in July, had my checkpoint in February, kind of end of February. On that side, and it was difficult mentally. It was really hard for me because I had a holiday booked in for end of February that I'd booked in probably 8 months in advance. So I kind of set myself a bit of a target as well. I thought, well, actually, if I want to go post checkpoint to this holiday, I need to get on this. I really kind of move on with this, actually. And also at the same time, from a work perspective, we were going through a kind of a business sale. So our business was being sold from a kind of private equity transaction perspective. And being the senior finance person there, that kind of took over my life for about 6 months leading up to that exit. And to put it in context, we exited on 16th of February and my shoot was on the 25th. So it was literally hand in hand. And actually, I think that partly got me through it, because I was so distracted through work as well that I didn't have the time to, in effect, get bored or snack or anything like that. I was just so busy doing my work stuff. But I'd make sure I'd carve out that time in the morning to go to the gym and so forth. And like I said, I'd never been to the gym before, never had any intention of going to the gym. And I thought, well, actually, I was getting to the point probably 4 or 5 months into my journey where at home my weights were getting heavier and heavier, which was brilliant, but my form was not brilliant. So again, it's really important to share your videos with your coaches, etc., because as much as it was brilliant, my kind of adjustable dumbbells, I was getting to the top end of the kind of almost the kind of 30 kilogram mark. but it was just a form I just felt uncomfortable with. It felt as though actually on my own in the room, am I doing the right thing or not? And the sessions were just taking a bit longer and longer while I was chopping and changing the weights and so forth. So in December, so I joined RNT in July. December, I joined our local gym. And I was just saying to Ed recently, haven't looked back. I love it. I now do 3 days a week in the gym, and my home gym is kind of redundant now. And actually, on the odd occasion, the only time I actually did it recently was when I wasn't feeling well and I didn't want to go to kind of a gym or an air conditioned room. And so I just did my workout at home. So I'm fortunate I've got enough weights and things like that at home that I can actually still do a workout. And I've got a training routine that Ed set for me to do one at home. But I love the gym. That's really kind of massive target for me to kind of grow in the next kind of year, 2 years, is kind of to really kind of push that mentally forward. And I never thought I'd be a gym rat, but yeah, I am. I love it.
How did you feel when you saw the photos on the photo shoot day? And you see the back of the camera, you see the first picture.
Yeah, it was the back of the back of the camera type of thing. It was just surreal, really surreal. And I think a lot of people who go through the shoot feel a bit apprehensive around the whole kind of putting the oil, kind of shaving the hair, all that kind of stuff like that, the kind of spray tan. But it all adds to the whole
experience,
kind of
right?
setup and the whole kind of experience. Absolutely.
Once in a lifetime.
Massively. It is a once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
But saying that, I'm also thinking maybe in a few years' time, you never know. You kind of go back into that kind of journey. But that's how I saw it. I generally saw it as a once in a lifetime, a moment to recognize, something that I could always kind of turn back to, kind of in the future, or if I'm, dare I say, if I'm at a low point or something that I just need, that motivation to kind of show me that this is where I've been. And this is where I can get to if I do ever feel like that. Thankfully, touch wood, I haven't yet. But it's something that I could always, for me, it was something that no one can take away from me. And it was my own journey. And that was a kind of key thing. I was massively headstrong. And my wife, she may or may not like me saying this, but she never quite got it initially, the journey I was on. She thought I was quite low, and that was the same thing with a lot of family actually members thought I was going too low. And I'm sure a lot of your kind of listeners and kind of current individuals will be the same thing as well. I was too low, unhealthy, all the usual comments that you typically get. And that pushed me even more. For me personally, that was a massive driver. I thought, that's great. If you're seeing that change on me, I'm doing something right. That's how I kind of interpreted it, and that's how I saw it. Is I am doing something right. Something's working, because I knew the kind of process. You and the coaches have always said this is never going to be a state you'd stay in. You'd always kind of hit your checkpoint, and then you kind of gradually work again and again. Hence that education piece kicking back in again. So it was really important. So I absolutely knew what I was getting into. And I was getting to a stage where it's not sustainable, but it was never purported to be sustainable either. That was something that you guys had never said, and I never said I wanted to do that either. So it made me even more determined that kind of everyone was kind of challenging me on this journey. But the flip side to it, it was sometimes it felt very much an isolated journey because I was doing it on my own. It felt as though I was doing it on my own because, like I said, I didn't necessarily have the support with kind of family, not necessarily with my wife. She supported me in her own ways in terms of helping doing the food, etc. But she just didn't believe it. I needed to kind of do what I needed to do. So it did feel like a lonely journey at times, but it made me massively headstrong and massively determined to get to the end. And I think that what really massively helped was kind of R&T on that side, be it the coaches, the kind of educational tools, my cohort, which was great, and I bet that got me over the kind of the edge of it, or got me kind of towards the end, was the shooters group that was kind of done at the end, which I kind of joined for the last kind of circa 6 weeks, I think, which is fantastic. That was probably the best thing out of the whole thing in terms of the motivation that I kind of needed. There was a bunch of us that were all on the same journey. We all kind of had similar kind of ways, similar kind of history, and we all were kind of motivating each other along. So seeing those photos, on the back of the screen was just amazing. And then kind of getting them at home as well, once the kind of they were edited, were even better on that side of things.
You created a calendar for your wife yet?
Yeah, well, yeah, got the calendar, got the top 20 photos. Well, it's supposed to be top 10, but none of these things ever can. I don't think you can ever condense them down.
No, it's hard.
10.
It's hard.
So
yeah, it's hard.
ended up just getting them all actually, and just kind of created a kind of a mini shoot, which actually some of my close friends and some of my close families who ended up being on that journey with me at the end, I kind of shared with a close group of individuals, and it was fantastic sharing that. And my sister in particular was brilliant. She was fantastic.
Amazing.
And I kind of shared those photos, and to share that. And actually, when you posted recently, some people, that's the first time they've seen those photos, because I've not necessarily shared that with everyone.
Yeah.
So again, it's quite interesting kind of getting some of the feedback from that. And yeah, like I said, amazing photos. Couldn't believe I got there, which I did. And now it's the kind of the next phase really, and kind of trying to manage that and making sure I set myself up for success.
Amazing.
That's the key thing with most of these things, just setting myself up and getting on the right journey, really.
How's the physical been the vehicle for you?
It's been everything, really. Kind of that. It's kind of started going from kind of the health to the kind of physical, but again, I guess it's not really just the physical side of things. It's really the mental side. It's being able to have, for me, the confidence with myself, and that is from a physical perspective and from a mental perspective, and the confidence to say no. I think that's a big thing that I've kind of learned and education is to say no. It is, and that can be in many shapes or form, whether it's kind of nutrition or whether it's doing something that I don't feel quite right with my mental state or whatever it may be. It is kind of giving me that massive confidence, and it's a state of mind. That's a key thing. It's that kind of state of mind. The physical side has been great for the kids, obviously, and for the photo shoot. And if I can pass some of my learnings to my children, which they've started to do, and I'm trying to do a little bit more around just educating them. It's great that if I pass on just a fraction of what I've learned to them, it just sets them up for success, because I never necessarily had that exposure when I was younger. So if I can get them to kind of start thinking about nutrition and kind of watching what they eat, kind of watching kind of the exercise that they do, it's fantastic. And I can't wait. I was telling my son, I can't wait to kind of start doing a bit more of the gym. He's 14, to start doing some of the gym weights with him. He's starting to do a few kind of weights in his bedroom and stuff. And I thought, okay, now let's start either going to the gym or start using our home gym, and it'll be amazing to kind of start doing things together, really.
What's your plans for year two? So you sign up for year two, you've kickstarted year two. What's your plans now post checkpoint? Now that you've done this photo shoot, you're actually 4 or 5 months away since the photo shoot actually. So you're sort of in investment phase now. What's your plans for investment phase? How have you found consolidation? What's your goals that you want to achieve in this next phase of the journey, which is often overlooked by many people?
Yeah, and it is. And so for me, I'd always wanted to kind of commit to a longer term here. Like I said, I've tried the kind of shorter term, and I've been on various journeys for a number of years before. So I kind of completely resonated with yourself when I think you were saying this is a long-term kind of process, and it's not just about getting to the checkpoint. So a key thing for anyone listening is checkpoint's fantastic. Don't get me wrong; it's a great tick box exercise, great photos, etc. But I always saw that as kind of phase one, personally, for me. For me, kind of the important, or probably the most important element, is where I am now, that kind of investment phase, that kind of year two, and potentially even year three, even going forward. It's the mental side of actually understanding, what my dominance is, or where I really want to get to, or what my body feels like it needs to get to, and doing it in a safe environment and a consistent environment. I think that's the thing, because what I don't want to do is kind of go back into that yo-yo state where I'm kind of either binge eating or snacking loads, putting on loads of weight, and then kind of doing a mini kind of CTP phase for a couple of weeks, and then taking that weight back off again, and then you kind of start. I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. And you probably can get away with doing that, I suspect, kind of fluctuating up and down. but it's not for me, and it's not something that I want to do.
You can't get away with it mentally.
No, and that's what it is. Physically good, but mentally you definitely can't do it. As I said, it was probably the most. It was the worst time and the best time, that kind of fat loss phase and the grind completely, and it was all mental, all pretty much mental side. So for me, the kind of importance of this year too is that education, getting it on a kind of consistent basis, and kind of learning for the rest of my life in effect, really. And it's actually, I'm still trying to figure out what that maintenance phase is for me. I think I have put on weight since the kind of checkpoint, which is always knew was going to be the case. I'm still trying to balance out kind of what I want to do. And I think as Ed, who's my coach, kind of consistently tells me, it's not necessarily where I want to be. It's really where my body ends up being and what my lifestyle, what lifestyle I want to do. So whether it's I want to have 1 or 2 puddings a week, for example, whether I want to have 2 or 3 drinks in a week, that will then determine, well, actually, what is then my kind of maintenance level? If I want to go for that, I'm going to have to, the consequences of that is, well, maybe I might be 1 kilo or 2 heavier than what I am kind of today, but to get me that kind of state of mind. So I'm still trying to balance that out, actually, in terms of that. But what kind of investment phase has allowed me to do is to kind of enjoy those kind of moments outside of the kind of day-to-day routine. So if I'm either celebrating a family event, or whether it's celebrating kind of a work event or a social event, I'm managing those a lot better now than actually during the fat loss phase, where I was pretty much, well, I'm not going to contribute to this, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to even attend some of this. A lot of that time, in order for me to get through that phase, I probably wasn't attending a lot of events because I was so focused on my end goal. Whereas now I'm attending them, but I'm managing them in a lot better. So whether it's 1 drink or 2 drinks, or whether actually making sure there's a heavy protein source, or knowing that actually I'm going to a family event where I know actually the food may not be great, or it might be all fried food, for example, have a protein shake in advance to kind of help me for that kind of food level, and making sure I don't overindulge at the time. I'm still learning. That's the key thing for me on that kind of side of things. And, and I mentioned at the top of the call actually around low carb and low fat. I think that's probably still stuck with me. I still haven't probably, if I'm being honest with myself, I've probably not shifted that mental state because that stuck with me for about 4 or 5 years. I was doing that for so many years where I thought actually the low or no carb is the right way forward. So even till today, if I'm having an extra drink, or if I'm having a drink that I've planned, kind of the routine would be I should still stick to the rest of my meal, but there'll be times where I might cut out the carbs as the first thing I'll cut out. I think that's the right thing to do, and I have to keep checking myself every so often on that basis. No, that's what I shouldn't be doing.
The one thing to consider there is, like, remember, you've lost 40 odd kilos or whatever it is now in total. And it's not been that long. It's not been that long, right? So you've probably heard the analogy that I've used before around, like, your brain, your body's lost 40 kilos and your body is lost 40 kilos, but your brain still has these behaviors and mindsets and associations that associate with that 118 kilos person, because that's what it's spent longer at, or 900 or whatever.
I spent most of my life at that level.
Exactly. So it's like you're trying to rewire now an identity of, I'm now 60, 70 kilos, whatever it is, and this is now me. And the brain sort of needs a bit of catching up to do. And that's going to take some time. And that's what the value of, like, the next couple of years are going to be for you on the RNT journey.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm still learning. And that's what Ed's supporting me massively on as my coach on that side of things. I think the thing that for me is kind of getting that goal in place. Obviously the checkpoint was a brilliant goal, and that was a fantastic goal. It's now kind of working with Ed around what are my goals, and as I mentioned earlier, I think something training, gym based, kind of resistant training, I think is probably the way for me, because I feel like I need that kind of goal to help me. But as you said, it's difficult to unwire all that kind of thoughts and kind of ways of working, because that's been engraved in me for many years on that side. So it's getting through it slowly but surely. But that's one of the reasons why I've kind of continued with RNT into year 2, and I suspect it will probably be for longer, just if I want to continue on that kind of journey, really.
If you're speaking to someone on day 1 of the journey right now, what's the best piece of advice you give them? One piece of advice.
I'd say stick to the plan, kind of get in, get out. That would be the kind of biggest thing for me is kind of, yeah, it may feel whether it's too much volume, too much carbs, you kind of too much fats, etc. Stick to it. You guys know what you're doing, and definitely go with the mentality of get in, get out. So that is it. That is probably the biggest advice I'd give to anyone on that side. And listen, and take. And I say that's biggest advice, but I'd say closely linked to that is take advantage of all the materials that you guys provide. It's very easy just to kind of be siloed and just follow your own kind of routine that you're supposed to do, your own nutrition plan, and not take advantage of anything else. Albeit I wasn't active in those calls, coaching calls, I'd listen to them 3 times a week. Absolutely. So, and I'd learn from them. As I mentioned, I was following your podcast 6 months in advance. I've started to do that again. So I kind of shift from the podcast to the coaching calls. I've now gone back to the podcast. I'm starting to listen to a lot more of your podcast now, actually, just to get to see what are.
You can listen to yourself now.
Yeah, not quite sure about that. Not convinced about that yet. But yeah, so take advantage of all the material. There was free material before even joining RNT, which was brilliant. But you got so much more whilst as an RNT member as well. Just take advantage of that.
Amazing. Well, look, it's been amazing seeing your journey going on this transformation. 40 odd kilos is a remarkable feat. The final 20 with RNT, achieving an amazing trek point, and here's to a very productive investment phase.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, no, very much looking forward to it. And again, thank you and the coaches for your support and the cohort.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Cheers.